I've lived in South Africa for 20 years and I've chose to become South African. My name's Phil Craig and I'm going to be leading a new political party called the Referendum Party, which is going to launch on the 9th of November. As South Africans, we've been shamed into silence, being called racist has become a shock collar that's used to control us. Our country is run by arrogant, incompetent, corrupt imbeciles. Cyril Ramaphosa might be my president on paper, but in my heart, and in the hearts of many listening today, he is the lead clown in the world's least funny circus. Our government is a total disgrace, and in the Western Cape, the majority of us have never once in 30 years voted for it. And that government cannot and must not get a free pass just because it's black.
I'm going to say something that may seem controversial, may seem also harsh to others. It's something that I've been thinking about for the longest of time, and it surfaced again when I saw a particular video which I'm going to show you. I am of a strong opinion that not all of us should be allowed to vote. For one main reason, we lack political education in this country. We get told by our media what to think, how to act, and how to react. Most people so desperately want to believe that black people are corrupt. And because also South Africa has a racial profile on people, it makes it easier for people to become politically illiterate. I guess this is why also I took a long time to vote, mainly because I wanted to understand politics. I feel like most of the people who talk the way that they talk, they enter level phase 1 of politics and they think that's how politics work, and that's not really how it works. And because we also have Caucasians who come into this country and exploit the problems of these countries, doesn't make this thing easier.
Hi, I'm making this video because it's time for us as South Africans to hear some hard truths. I've lived in South Africa for 20 years and I've chose to become South African. I've never for one single day regretted that choice because I love this country and I love its people. But one thing has frustrated me above all else. As our country falls apart around us, we don't seem to be able to find the courage to stand up for ourselves and say enough. So I'm here today to tell you enough is enough and it's time for a revolution. My name's Phil Craig and I'm going to be leading a new political party called the Referendum Party, which is going to launch on the 9th of November. The Referendum Party is a battle cry. It's a call to arms. It's the start of the next chapter in our history. As South Africans, we've been shamed into silence. Being called racist has become a shock collar that's used to control us. We've reached the point where nobody wants to say the emperor is naked. Well, the emperor is naked. Our country is run by arrogant, incompetent, corrupt imbeciles. Cyril Ramaphosa might be my president on paper, but in my heart, and in the hearts of many listening today, he is the lead clown in the world's least funny circus. Our government is a total disgrace, and in the Western Cape, the majority of us have never once in 30 years voted for it. And that government cannot and must not get a free pass just because it's black. And neither should the majority of black voters who repeatedly insist on electing it simply because they're too racist to vote for a party led by somebody of a different race. Non-racialism is a two-way street. And far too much of our focus in South Africa is on the past, but it should be on the future. We seem to be unable to be honest about our past. Apartheid was a terrible policy, and for whatever my part was in it, I apologise without reservation. If I had the power to go back and make sure it had never happened, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I can't, and nor can anybody else. But I'm also sick of the endless lies that are peddled by those who want to shame their opponents into silence. Our problems didn't start in 1652. In many respects, the opposite happened. When the Dutch landed in Cape Town, they set South Africa on a trajectory that would see it become the most successful and advanced country on the African continent. I refuse to feel shame over that. I feel proud. Just as you must feel proud whatever it is that your ancestors achieved. History cannot be simply reduced to good or bad. It's always both. Colonialism brought roads and railways, medicine and literature. It brought water and sanitation, electricity and food security. It brought schools and universities. I'll not watch silently on as the legacy of my ancestors who grafted to build Africa's most advanced country is reduced to nothing, and neither must you. We live in a democracy, and for that I thank the many people and organisations of all colours within and outside of South Africa who gave so much to make this our reality. And this includes Mandela's ANC. I respect that democracy, and therefore the voters in the rest of the country are entitled to vote for our government of clowns, if that's what they really must do. But I demand the same respect for the people of the Western Cape who've rejected those clowns, and we are entitled to democracy too. A clear majority of Western Cape voters support a referendum being held on Cape independence. A referendum will allow us to rid ourselves of the national government that most of us despise. It will allow us to once again begin building up our country rather than watching it being broken down. It will allow us to create a country where our children want to stay rather than one which they cannot wait to leave. But one man is standing in the way of the future that we want most. Premier Windey is refusing to call the referendum that will put the Western Cape people in control of their own destiny. Premier Windey is denying us democracy. If Ramaphosa is the clown, then Windey is the puppet. He leads a government which can't set its own economic policy, and as a result 25% of us are unemployed. He leads a government which can't control its own police force. As a result, we're being murdered at the highest rate in the world. He leads a government which can't collect its own taxes. As a result, our tax money is being used to subsidise ANC corruption and incompetence in the rest of South Africa. He leads a government which can't control its own borders, and which has watched helplessly on as 1 million people were legally settled land in the Western Cape in the last decade, and where we then had to pick up the bill to provide services to those people instead of spending money on the people who were here legally. He leads a government which allows the clowns to make all the decisions. When we elected him in 2019, he promised to fight for the control of policing and rail. He's failed. He failed because instead of calling a referendum and claiming our right to determine our own future, he chose to plead and beg the clowns to have pity on us. Well, it's time for the Premier to get off his knees. It's time for the Premier to tell the circus to leave town. It's time for the Premier to show that his primary allegiance is to the Western Cape people he was elected to serve. It's time for the Premier to call a referendum on Cape independence and let the people decide for themselves how their future must look. Sadly, Premier Windey doesn't have the courage to do what's required. So as the Western Cape people, if we want a referendum, we're going to have to use our votes to make him listen to us. And it's time for those who do have the courage to stand up. It's time to start demanding the future that we want, whatever names people might call us. It's time to build a future that our children are going to be proud of. It's time for the revolution. It's time to vote for a referendum on Cape independence. It's time to vote for the Referendum Party. If you want to join us at our launch on the 9th of December, you'll find the details at our social media platforms, which are at Vote Referendum, or you can visit our website, which is www.referendumparty.org. Thank you.
People in Cape Town who are obsessed with the idea of isolating themselves from the rest of South Africa can have the similar fate of Palestinians. For those who continuously trust Caucasians shock me. Seriously, the minute they create Cape Town to become an independent country, they will immediately begin their ethnic cleansing, involuntarily creating your own problems, where they can now claim these people that they are the original people of Cape Town. Let's not forget that South Africa is very heavy when it comes to loading fugitives from Western countries who escaped crimes or criminal activities which they've done from their countries. So most of them come here to preach morality while they escaped judgment and punishment from their own lands. And it did not start with the new ones that are coming in. It's been happening since John van Riebeeck, before the Dutch East India Company started, because they hired him. So you need to track back before he was hired and why he was fired. And also they gave him a second chance after they reinstalled him and put him to South Africa. So Europe has been doing this thing where they offload the rejects of Europe into Africa since the beginning of time. Pedophile, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, all sorts of people that they reject into our land, into our sacred space. And now the same very people are preaching morality. The same people whom, by the way, are behind majority of the corruption that's happening in the country. Let's go back to when he talks that he comes from Britain, which his country is stealing coal to supply their own country. So what do you want to do? You want to ensure that Cape Town become an independent country where they create your own apartheid state, where it's easier for you to continue to steal resources from South Africa? Is that what you want to do? I guess this is why I'm saying we need political education in this country. We need to be liberated upstairs, and those who are not should not be allowed to vote. It might sound harsh, but it's the truth. I guess this is why I'm gonna be voting this year. It will be my first time voting because I felt in my right state of mind that I'm not qualified to vote. I'm not. Everything else is gonna be about the media, what the media says and how the media portrays other people and portrays a certain group of people, you know? Anywho, that's my own. I do not blame you for assuming this is what I mean when I talk about political education, because the English language has done us little justice when it comes to expression and how we comprehend information, especially African people. So with this statement, I'm trying to tell you that you missed the plot of what I'm talking about, because I'm not talking about any of these things. Keep in mind that I also referenced myself in this conversation. I did not exclude myself. And from what I'm sensing in your comment, you're talking about political from a Western angle. There are many people who would be smart and well-spoken and Western educated, but they still politically illiterate. I myself went to these schools where they taught me how to express myself like a Westerner. That does not mean that I am politically educated. When you're politically educated from an African perspective, where you read books like Steve Biko and he talks about it in his Black Consciousness book, you also get to see the angle of which I'm coming from. What people think politics is not politics. That's not how politics work. Remember also as a youth that people are after your state of mind. People are trying to influence you to think a certain way, to act a certain way, to behave a certain way so that they can have control over you. I also stated that I did not vote for the longest time because I did not understand politics. I was not aware of how politics work in South Africa. It's a little bit more complex than how the media portrays it to be. And it is more beyond the ANC because we are still under the bondage of colonization. And what people are trying to do is to separate those things like it's over and that now Black people are in charge when it's actually false. Your right to something can also later on become your problem. You can also get yourself into unnecessary problems because you felt entitled to something because it is your right. Remember that with rights comes responsibility, and you must be a responsible person in terms of voting. Your mind should not be influenced by anything other than you. So I'm not talking about this when I talk about political education or political illiteracy, because you can go to Western schools and still be politically illiterate. You can be woke and still be politically illiterate. You can be educated in Western terminology, but you are politically illiterate. And then comes a boy from the ghetto who are well aware of how politics work. You see? So we are not talking about that. It goes beyond that.